2 years ago I made a video titled How I Got Every Achievement in Terraria. Unfortunately, a new update came out just 3 months later that introduced several more achievements. And the comments underneath that video have been sure to remind me of that ever since. Most of the new achievements are fairly easy to obtain, so I got them pretty quickly through normal gameplay. But there was one exception. To unlock this achievement, the player must talk to the Dryad in a world devoid of Crimson, Corruption, and Hallow. After 2 years of putting this achievement off, I think it's about time I restore my 100% ribbon. But I want to take things a step further. I want to purify the entire world before the Dryad even arrives. That way, she'll never get the chance to tell me I should try harder. As we boot into the world, our first order of business is to quarantine the Crimson Biome, which is actually very easy to do. Well, at least in pre-hard mode. For now, the world evil can only spread to adjacent grass blocks, so we only have to worry about the surface. You can use any incorruptible block to contain the biome, but I went with sunflowers. For those unaware, they prevent the grass they've been planted on from being infected. So by placing a sunflower on either side of our two Crimson biomes, we have successfully contained the world evil until hard mode. But how should we go about actually cleansing the world? Well, in pre-hard mode, our options are very limited. With no Dryad, we can't use purification powder. So our only other option is to manually destroy every single Crimson block in our world. Certainly possible, just not very practical. So instead, the plan is to progress to hard mode, get the Steampunker to move in, and buy the Contaminator. Of course, this all has to be done without spawning in the Dryad. Initially, I thought this would be quite tricky, but it turns out we just have to avoid killing any of these 3 bosses. But before we even think about progressing to hard mode, we have some work to do. The Crimson Spread is an entirely different beast in hard mode. It will begin spreading to many more types of blocks, most notably stone, allowing it to spread through the underground. It also will be able to spread 3 tiles away. We're going to need a lot more than a few sunflowers to keep this at bay. To prevent the spread, we need to dig a 3-tile gap around the entire biome. Unfortunately, the best tool I had to do this with was a gold pickaxe, so it took nearly 40 minutes to dig around the one biome. This challenge is going to require a lot of mining, so I decided it would be a good idea to find some ways to improve our mining speed sooner rather than later. While the total mining speed bonuses from buffs and items equates to 135%, according to the wiki, the game will cap the stat boost off at 70% for the player, so it doesn't actually take much to maximize your efficiency. The first item I searched for was the Ancient Chisel, an accessory that boosts mining speed by 25%. If we could find this accessory, we'd be over 1/3 of the way there, if we could find it. I spent a good hour or 2 searching my desert with spelunkers, opening every chest I could find, but to no avail. Because I decided to do this challenge on a small world, so there would be less to purify, there weren't as many chests to loot, so not a single chisel had been generated. We could get it to drop from a desert crate, but I felt it would be quicker to try and find other ways to reach the cap. So I switched gears and began grinding out the mining set, which can be obtained from skeleton miners found in the cavern lair. They're a pretty rare spawn though, so I decided to make a quick farm for them. Oh, and just as a side note, the Aether biome can be a great spot for little farms like this because of how it generates. The biome completely fills the area around it with stone, preventing enemies from getting stuck in little caves off screen and slowing down your farm. It also has plenty of flat open space for enemy spawns. I left my game on for a few hours last night, and I was able to get the entire mining set and a bone pick, which is actually one of the best pickaxes in pre-hard mode. It's tied with the silver pickaxe for the fastest mining speed before hard mode, and is equal to the gold pickaxe power. But just wait until we start stacking some more buffs. This thing will become absolutely ridiculous. At this point, it's been a good couple hours since destroying an orb, so I decided to just spawn the goblin army in manually. Once again, I set up an AFK farm by the ocean, and left my game on for half an hour to grind some cloth. Unfortunately, I just made a huge mistake. We have over 200 life now, and unlike the last AFK farm, this one's on the surface, which means we meet the natural spawn requirements for the Eye of Cthulhu. And if you recall, this is one of the bosses that we have to avoid killing to prevent the Dryad from spawning. This might not sound like that big of a deal, because we're AFK and lava can't damage it. However, I still had the honeycomb equipped, an accessory that releases bees when we take damage. We also had enough defense to completely tank the boss. I had somehow created the perfect set of circumstances to end our run. Thankfully, I came back to see what was going on before it was too late. But if I had come back just a few minutes later, or if the Eye had spawned the night prior instead, we'd be back to square one. So while we jeopardized our run in the process, we had ourselves enough tattered cloth. I then made quick work of the goblins and found the Tinkerer. Light is the best modifier with a 15% boost in mining speed, but seeing as I was short on gold, I settled for Agile, which gives us a 10% boost. Fortunately, the game does not count this bonus towards the 70% total in the calculation, giving us even more room for bonuses. I then threw a fruit into the shimmer for the ambrosia, a permanent 5% buff to our mining speed. Finally, to reach the cap, we'll use consumable buffs. I stocked up on mining potions, they give a 30% boost, and well-fed buffs that can give a 5, 10, or 15% boost based on the food tier. We'll just be needing the lowest tier food to reach the cap. With that, we've maximized our mining speed. So yeah, as you can see, much faster. I think that was definitely worth our time. That's actually crazy. On the left is our setup for the first Crimson biome, and on the right is after all the buffs. It's night and day. And with that, we're done. That took 6 minutes. I think before it took 40-ish, if not more. Though we didn't have to do this side, but this would only take like another minute. However, we're not quite done yet. There's a common misconception that walls can spread the world evil. This is likely because you can see Crimson spread and infect natural walls. However, the walls themselves cannot spread Crimson to blocks. You can think of it as purely a visual change, so we can just leave them be. However, the less talked about thorny bushes and vines actually can infect blocks in hard mode. While it's fairly unlikely to happen, the thorny bushes that you can see on the surface can grow right beside your 3-block gap, then reach across to spread the evil to the other side. Additionally, if you have any grass underneath your quarantine zone, vines will eventually grow and invalidate all of your efforts. So it's imperative that you add some non-corruptible blocks like wood to each side of your biome on the surface, and make sure grass cannot spread to the underside of your biome. If you want to be extra safe, you can line the bottom with any block except mud or dirt. Now that we've completely sealed off our Crimson biomes, we can progress to hard mode. I chose the normal difficulty for this world because I was just concerned with getting the achievement as fast as possible. As a result, defeating the wall was a piece of cake with a few sticks of dynamite. Entering hard mode is great because we get access to the Contaminator after defeating a mech boss. However, there are two very big downsides that I haven't mentioned yet. First off, the Crimson begins to spread at a much faster rate. Additionally, the world generates what is commonly referred to as the hard mode V, one diagonal strip of Crimson and one of Hallow that run from top to bottom of the world, connecting in hell to form a V-shape. This, unfortunately, creates a lot more work for us, but because of just how effective the Contaminator is, progressing to hard mode is easily worth it in my eyes despite these negatives. But like I said before, the world evil is spreading much faster now, so we have to act fast. Just like we did in pre-hard mode, our first step is to zone off the new infections. Thanks to the mining loadout we set up earlier, the introduction of the hard mode enemies was inconsequential in this step. Now that we've clearly defined where we will need to purify, it was time to focus on getting the Steam Bunker. To get this NPC, we must defeat any of the 3 mech bosses. Interestingly enough, if I had made this exact same video before 1.4.4, this step would have been a lot more annoying. This is because every time you destroyed a demon altar in previous iterations of Terraria, an evil block would randomly spawn in the world somewhere. As you can imagine, this would make this challenge a little bit more difficult. So naturally, we would have to avoid smashing altars, but if we did that, the only way to spawn a mech boss would be to farm for the 1 in 2,500 summon. But because we're in 1.4.4, we can safely destroy an altar and craft the summon for whichever mech we'd like to fight. If cheese is on the table, the easiest mech to defeat is undoubtedly the Destroyer. I'm sure most of you have seen the Dynamite speed kill by now, but for those of you that haven't, by roping above the ocean, placing a chest just barely out of view, and tossing down some dynamite, you can kill the boss in a matter of seconds. With no other suitable block to spawn on, the Destroyer is forced to spawn right below you, giving you easy access to every one of its segments. With that, the Steam Bunker is free to move in. However, we're not quite ready to start purifying our world. We still have to actually buy the Contaminator, which, as I'm sure you're all aware, isn't exactly cheap. So I made the easiest and most efficient money grind I could think of: the Surface Mimic Farm. I wouldn't be surprised if some of you weren't even aware that mimics could spawn on the surface, because they can be quite rare since the spawn requirements generally don't occur naturally. For a mimic to spawn above ground, there has to be natural dirt walls present in hard mode. You don't need nearly this much showing, but my terrain wasn't very flat, so I had to dig a little extra. Then you simply rope up until you can no longer see the surface blocks, and wait. I highly recommend wiring up a dart trap to aggro them once they spawn in. It will also double as a good audio cue to indicate when there's a mimic ready to be slain. Of course, to maximize the efficiency of your farm, definitely bring some water candles and battle potions. Mimics drop a lot of gold when killed, and when you take into account the gold you can earn from selling the drops, the farm is very lucrative. So after 1 battle potion, we'd earned enough gold for the Contaminator and 1500 solution. The Contaminator has a purification range of 60 blocks. By spraying the solution to the left and right of the player, we'll have covered a horizontal distance of 120 blocks. Therefore, If we dig a tunnel down to hell every 120 tiles from one side of the Harbo V to the other, we should be able to purify the whole thing. I wasn't lying when I said there was going to be a lot of digging. Okay, if I don't bring this up now, I'm sure I'll get a ton of comments about it. So yes, I do know about the Terraformer. Yes, it has much better range, so we wouldn't have to dig as many tunnels. But it's also post-Moonlord, and I'm no speedrunner. So at least for me, it's way faster to use the less efficient Contaminator because it's available much early in progression. To help with the digging and purification process, I defeated Skeletron and looted the Cobalt Shield from the dungeon. Getting knocked up on the way down would burn tons of time and could lead us to missing a spot in the purification process. I'm only going to have one shot at this. If the Dryad arrives and we don't get that achievement, we have to start all over. But wait, didn't I just meet the spawn requirements for the Dryad too early? Well, yes, but that's completely fine because we have our Contaminator now. So I don't actually need these NPCs anymore. We can now just prevent her from spawning by taking out the torches from each house until we're ready. So after about 30 minutes of digging, we were finally done. The first half of the mine shafts. I can only imagine how much longer this would have taken without any of those mining buffs. With half the tunnels complete, I used a Featherfall potion and started contaminating. And while it was certainly tedious, it was incredibly satisfying seeing the world evil gradually melt away on the minimap. Though after a while, I noticed our solution was draining much faster than I was expecting. When I initially bought everything from the Steampunker, I figured we had plenty, but my estimates were very wrong, as we ran out of green solution just before purifying only half of the V. So after grinding some gold and buying more solution, I made sure to pass over the last couple tunnels again, just in case anything spread during that process. Again, we really want to be thorough here. And with that, we purified the Hallow Biome in the first half of the V. From there, it was simply a matter of repeating this process for the other side, and then finally contaminating the original Crimson Biomes we started with. It took about 8 hours to get to the digging and purifying stage, and another 3 to finish it all off. But provided I didn't make any mistakes, we should be left with a completely purified world. So we're free to add the torches back to our houses and spawn the Dryad. But only if I haven't made any mistakes. And I wasn't all that confident. So I did one last pass to the surface to see if there was anything I missed. And thank God I did. Oh my God, I am so glad I noticed this. Okay, I died, but I don't care, because this rarely ever happens. I don't even know if I've seen this before, because I don't usually loot islands that much. I've heard that this could happen, but I've never experienced this for myself until now. In the previous illustrations I've shown of the Hard Mode V, the strip started at the surface, but it would be more accurate to show it starting from space. However, I didn't bother because generally you wouldn't notice this unless you just so happen to have a Skyland intersect with part of the V, like mine did here. Because of how rare this occurrence is, I completely forgot to check the islands. If it weren't for the Wyvern that spawned, I doubt I would have found this until it was too late. A nice change of pace from the typical Wyvern spawns that ruined my day. So after purifying the island and double checking that none of the other ones had been impacted, I slept through one full day and waited for the Dryad to arrive. It's very important that we sleep for a full day here, because it takes one in-game day for the Dryad to update the status of the world. Had we not done this, we could have had to start over despite having a completely pure world. Okay. Here's the Dryad. Now we hope everything's in order and we didn't miss a spot. I was pretty thorough, as you can see. But we'll see what happens. Here we go. Status. Purity is completely pure. Did an amazing job. Is there any more? Is that it? That's it. It's just always that. I was hoping there'd be like unique dialogue if you can get it first. I was pretty sure there wouldn't be. Let's be real. But that's pretty cool to have the Dryad spawn in. And then she's never told you off about being lazy. Because we had it done. We did our homework. And there we have it. I can finally say once again that I have every achievement in Terraria. For now. Unfortunately, there's a new update on the horizon, which will more than likely add more achievements. But hopefully I'll be spared from those YouTube comments for at least a few months. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all next time.